Hi guys, and we are back, and in this video we are going to be talking about the concept of encapsulation. Like earlier in the last video we left at polymorphism, and in this video we're going to be talking about encapsulation. Before we get on into the programming part of it, let's just unpack the word here, right? So encapsulation basically means you're trying to encapsulate, like you are trying to put something, you're trying to enclose something in a capsule so that it can be accessed outside of it, right? It doesn't come in exposure to the outside stuff, right? And encapsulation in Python particularly means that you may have like a class with certain variables and certain functions that you don't want to be accessed uh, outside of the class, right? And we're gonna see that in this video. Also, with encapsulation, I'm also gonna talk about some fundamental concepts of Python, and let's just get started. All right, so I've already created a file called encapsulation python.py, and for the demonstration of encapsulation, what I can do here is I can create a class. Let me call the class smartphones. All right, and then okay, so now what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna do a little interesting thing. Just don't freak out. All right, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create a function called init, right? And now this is not like your ordinary function. This is called the constructor function. And what that basically means, I think it's a fancy word here. I threw a fancy word. I said it's a constructor, but what that basically means is that whenever you create an object of the class, it's gonna close its eyes and just first run this function. So what we do, what programmers usually do is they create this init function because they want to maybe initialize certain variables and attribute them to the class, so that the class now has some inherent properties. Or you could have like run you could call some like fundamental functions, like whenever somebody creates an object of the class, maybe you want to run some fundamental functions that does a list of very important set of instructions that is very essential for the rest of the things that are in the class. You could have all sorts of things here inside within the scope of the init function, right? And this is basically the constructor of the class. And what we are gonna do in this video is we are gonna create some variables, and we're gonna attribute them to our smartphones class, so that now the class has some inherent properties. And as the parameter of the inherent init function, we are gonna pass self. Now I briefly touched on the concept of self in my earlier video, but now I'd like to dive into that in more detail. So self basically means that you are creating an instance of the class, right? And now what we can do with self is it almost acts as if it's working on behalf of the class. So like and basically smartphones, you could say that self is has become smartphone, right? And every time you create a variable and you prefix it with self, what happens is it takes that value, it takes that variable, and attributes it as the property of the class. And let me just show you really quick what I mean by that, right? So now what I can do here is I can have like, I could say that the smartphones have like three properties, right? And what I can do is I can like create three price points for three smartphone models, right? So there could be and before initializing the variable, I have to prefix it by saying self, right? So I just want to make sure that the smartphones has that property, right? So I could have like Xiaomi phones are usually cheaper, so I could have like Xiaomi 10, Xiaomi price as 10. And then I could have like Samsung price. Samsung phones are relatively more expensive, so I could have it as 50. And finally I could have the iPhone price, and usually iPhones are usually the most expensive of the three, so I could have like 100, right? And now what I have done here is I have given the smartphones class certain inherent properties. And now when I create an object of the smartphones class, let me call it dalal, and when I give it the access, what I've done here is now dalal has become an object of the smartphones class. So now it recognizes all the variables and all the functions that are within the scope of the smartphones class. So now if I use dalal to access the Xiaomi price, it's gonna be able to do that, right? So if I just print here real quick, right, if I print here real quick and if I see what files it here, okay, encapsulation, and if I run the code, it says 10 because now I'm trying to access the value that is in the Xiaomi price variable, right? So similarly, if I try to create if I try to access Samsung price and iPhone price, I I should be able to do it, right? Because these are just ordinary variables, right? Now let's talk about the concept of encapsulation. Now if we want to do something else, so in Python, okay, so here we have three types of variables, right? We have public variable, which are these, and then we have protected variable that we identify by just one underscore, and then we have private variables that we declared by two underscores, right? We prefix the variable with two underscores for private variable, and we prefix the variable with one underscore with for protected variable, right? And so why do we have this, right? We create this because we don't want to accidentally modify them, right? And I want to emphasize on the word accidentally, because if you wanted to intentionally modify the variable, you could still do that here. But like whenever we in Python has this convention that whenever we have one underscore, programmers are said to become more aware of what they're changing, because now one underscore means the person is trying to access a protected variable, and whenever I have like two underscores, it means that uh, the value is absolutely private, right? And it cannot be accessed, right, accidentally. So for example, if I just show you what I mean by that, here is okay, so like before I get into the private variable, because that is the most protected of the three, so if I run the code, it should just work. It should just give us 10 and it should give us 50, right? But if I try to access the iPhone price, which we prefixed by two underscores and thereby making it a private variable, what happens is we get an error, right? We get an error saying that I was able to access the value of Xiaomi price, and I was also able to access the value of Samsung price, although I needed to be more careful because I was accessing a protected variable. But I couldn't access the iPhone price because you made it a private variable, right? So I couldn't access it. And that is the main concept of encapsulation. You can use encapsulation to, create this sort of barrier, but you could always do something else to modify it, right? And we can use the object dalal object to modify the variable if we wanted, because dalal is an object of the smartphones class, right? Now so far what I've covered is a very rudimental concept of encapsulation, but I want to make it a little more interesting, right? A little more complex perhaps, but I'm gonna talk you through that, because what I did here, this is just like very basic stuff. So what I want to do here is I want to create get set methods, right? So I don't want to print like that. I want to use the class to do all my work, right? So get set function basically is that I want to maybe create a function where I can pass in certain parameters, where I can pass in certain variable, certain price range for each of the phones. And then what I can do using the get function is I can tell that function to throw back all the price points, all the price ranges back at me, right? So what I can do here is I can create another function called the set price, and I always need to pass self, right? But now I could have like three different price points. I could have like a cheap price point, I could have like a mid-range price point, and then I could have also like a expensive price point. And then what I can do here is I can say self dot Xiaomi price. I want the Xiaomi's to be cheap because that's how I like them, and then I want the uh, uh, Samsung price to be mid range, and then I can have like self dot iPhone price, because iPhone price are expensive, so I can set the iPhone price as expensive, right? And now what I can do with the get function, right? I can say get price, and then as a parameter I want to pass self, and then what I want my get function to do is I want my get function to return, to throw back all the functions at throw back all the prices at me after I've set them, right? So I want my get price function to throw back Xiaomi price, and then I want it to throw back Samsung price, and then finally I want it to throw back the iPhone price, right? iPhone price. All right. Okay. Now what we can do here is, since we have created the Dalal object of the smartphones class, what we can do here is we can use the Dalal object to access the set price, right? We can say Dalal dot set price, and then we can have like three different price points, right? So maybe I am trying to raise the price of Xiaomi smartphones to 100, and similarly Samsung phones now become 200, and then iPhones can be like 500. That makes sense. And then what I can do here is I can use the Dalal object once again to access the get price function, right? And then what I can do here is I can say print, because I don't have a print instruction anywhere, so just to make sure. Now see, when I run the code, what's gonna happen? Dalal is going to set the different price points, and then what I'm doing here is I'm using the get price function to fetch all the values, right, of the different price points. And since I'm being intentional here, my program allows me to do it regardless of whether the variable is private or protected, because now I have given Dalal I've made Dalal an object of the smartphones class, and I'm being really intentional here. And whenever a programmer looks at this code, he instantly knows that Samsung price is a protected variable and iPhone price is a private variable, so he knows how to deal with it, right? And I showed you that we couldn't access iPhone price, but if I'm being really intentional here, and if I want to set the variable as 500, now if I run the code, I should get all the price points, right? And I do, right? I get 100 for Xiaomi price, and so on and so forth. So I just wanted you to understand the fundamental concept of encapsulation and how encapsulation works, and you can use this similar concept to make certain other functions private and protected as well. And that's basically that's all I wanted to cover within the scope of this video, and see you guys next time. Bye.